Okay, well, welcome, Kristen and Amy. Um, Amy,
Bernadette's coming too.
I think Amy, you were on in the inbound class last fall too. Is that correct? Is that the right?
I think so.
Yeah, and
Hey, David.
You
Kristen's
were in his other class too.
right,
Probably.
and
I love these classes.
and Kristen, where are you, by the way?
I am here in Richmond and teach CPR and advanced life saving.
Oh wow, that's a very valuable skill. Thank you. Anyway, so today email matters. Why it matters. That's what we want to learn. Some of you are probably saying, yeah, everyone says I should email why. That's a good question. Today we're not going to get very fancy here. We're just doing the basics. The basics is anything in marketing should always start with the basics because marketing is about trying out things, learning, and then evolving as you go. So it doesn't matter what part of marketing you're looking at. Don't jump into the advanced level because then it's sort of like trying to be good at calculus without having done algebra. You got to have that foundational stuff first. Little do's and don'ts of email to generate success, and how to get engagements, leads, and sales. Now you're not going to walk away from here saying, "Okay, I know how to do this. Great, and my business is going to change overnight." Like everything else, it's a kind of a bit of work, and you have to trial and error, and nothing is exactly the same for every business. There are similarities across businesses and within industries and across industries. There's some basics that apply to everybody. And we'll start from there. So who am I? I once sang backup for Barry Manilow, and I totally regret telling Tiffany about it because she started calling me the Barry Manilow of marketing, and without acknowledging the fact that I'm never really a fan of Barry Manilow, but I just enjoy the fact that I got to sing backup for him. So, although he's a great guy, and he's obviously, I don't criticize other people's taste in music because it's like, obviously the person who's selling millions of albums, that's their taste, and just let them enjoy it. Like many people, I have an accidental career across different industries and countries. Still figuring out what I want to do with my life. I'm turning 60 this year, and I'm on my third career, and I'm starting to think about a fourth one. And that includes having been in warehouse and logistics and call centers and running a global agency out of Japan and things like that. So, and then my last job before I went feral was working at Microsoft in marketing operations. Now I've had this hybrid consultancy agency for it'll be 13 years in September, so 12 plus years. And who would have thought when you started your business you'd still be alive to see it 10 years later? Like you always think like, I got to do this until I find something else. But I was really more like after my last job, looking for a job. In the middle of the interview process, I said to myself, I'm the worst employee on planet Earth. I've always been the worst employee, even when I'm the president of my division or whatever. You still have a boss, and eventually every boss I ever had learns to hate me. So I was like, why am I going out looking for another job? And sort of like, and I always, I'm one of those smart guys, like the wise guys that be like, well, they always say hire people smarter than you. So you're saying that, I'm not smarter than you, but why did you hire me? That kind of stuff. So yeah. So today we're going to go through 5, 9, 8 things here. I'm not going to read these to you because you can read yourself, but the one that's italicized and bold, avoiding spam filters to boost engagement. We're not really going to cover that. I'm just going to mention that later in the Q&A, but this is basically something not to worry too much about in the beginning. If you take care of the basics, but if anybody ever needs any help setting something up and want to know if you're set up properly, you're welcome to reach out and have me do a little check for you. I'm not a highly technical person, but I just know how things are supposed to work. And can help you identify problems. So going right into things, I'd like to include this. This is Seth Godin, and I had this slide in for the inbound thing, but it's also even really important for email because I'm not much of a business book reader. I find most business books very hard to read, and they work better for me as audiobooks actually, but also I just find them really boring, and really kind of like with a lot of common sense. So when you're listening to it, it's like, oh, it's just common sense. It's like when you study, if you studied economics in college, about halfway through the semester of economics 101, you say, oh, this is just common sense, but with different vocabulary. That's kind of what a lot of this stuff is. But I always say, imagine the people you want to serve, the people that you care about, what they care about, and then figure out why they don't have it yet. That's really what it comes down to. And then inbound is about making sure that when they're ready to go look for it, that you're making it available. Say email is going to be something that is deeply connected to inbound, but also has its own independent value as an outbound type of marketing. Just about the only type of outbound marketing that I actually really use or promote or care to encourage people to do. But Seth, if you haven't never read a Seth book, Permission Marketing is the one book of his that I did read end to end, and was really, yeah, it's all common sense now, but at the time he wrote it, it was kind of radical, because for those of us who were around doing direct marketing before the internet was kind of a shocking thing to see. Everybody age 19 and older was suddenly able to make their own databases and shoot out emails and all kinds of things. It became the Wild West of marketing as soon as the internet happened. And all the knowledge of direct marketing from the previous 40 years was thrown out the window and ignored. But like, you know, I remember like 5-6 years into the internet world when people started just saying, hey, I thought of something. How about if we segment our emails? And it's like, yeah, there's actually a bunch of books about that from the 1970s that the direct marketing people wrote. You didn't actually invent that. You could have just read the book and avoided a lot of pain. So why email? First of all, email is the highest ROI of any kind of marketing channel you could have. So they estimate, this is from 2023, that a dollar spent on your email was giving you a return of $36 in sales. So hopefully you have, hopefully your cost structure makes $36, 36 to 1 profitable for you. If it doesn't, that's a problem, but you really can't do better than email if you're doing it right. So there's a million statistics. For those of you that are familiar with HubSpot, there's an annual marketing report they have. That's great to have, but there's also, they have a bunch of stats on 2023 email marketing. I just chose one to put here. Basically, last year, most of us got an increase in engagement via email. I can say for my clients, I had about half got an increase and a couple were flat or below. And of course, we completely blame ourselves for either one of those scenarios, but but there's a lot of factors that affect industry, affect different types of companies, affect whatever the trends are and the products you're selling. But really, it's one of the few places you can engage people, that you can really engage people, with your own voice in an outbound way, right? Social media kind of do too, but it's not going directly at the person as you're kind of hoping they see it. So this one is really sort of something when you have permission to send people an email, it gives you a direct access to their ears, basically, or eyes. So we talked about building. Hang on, I gotta change my display here a second. I gotta figure out. Sorry. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, is that still full screen for everybody, or? Okay. So building and nurturing email list, first of all, with the understanding, obvious understanding, I hope that it's, with data that's appropriate, legal, and welcomed by the user. So I'll say right now, do not ever rent a list from somebody. So you all probably have an inbox every day, somebody saying, hey, I got a list of 13,472 people that fit your, customer profile. Even though it's something completely not in your own industry, but there's people out there selling this stuff. Do not rent lists. So for example, some software companies, for example, like HubSpot, they have it in your contract that they could actually shut down your software if you're using rental list. So when you actually import data, they actually ask you to confirm once again that this is a list you have permission to email. So that's how important it is. I'm not going to get into talking about the legality of it. because it's basically not legal to email people without their permission. But we all get so much junk mail every day, this is not really enforced. And it's really hard to enforce it. It's much stricter in Europe and California. California imitating Europe's email laws actually was good for the whole country, because rather than try to filter out and segment the California people differently than everybody else, when you're not even sure who's in California or not, people just, the good brands are actually just sort of conforming to the California law for the whole country, and that's a good thing. So email really is a form of, think it was a form of farming. For those of you that like farming, and it's if you don't like farming, we'll have to think of another analogy for you later, but you need to remind your customers, why they came to you in the first place. So somebody buys something from you and now you have a record of them, but they never hear from you again, then you're really not taking advantage of the fact that they welcomed you, they welcomed you into their home once, and not, and then you've never sent them anything since, right? But all your emails should be about making sure consistently expressing your brand, and then making connections. So I want to focus on the fact that email is not about promoting products, right? It's really about engagement and focusing on making connections. Now, for example, like if you're doing CPR classes, for example, obviously the email needs to tell people what the CPR classes are, but if the emails are always just about your product, then they know what's coming before they open it, they're not going to open email. But if your email is about educating them on some aspect of, the broader category that you work in, and the subject line mentions something interesting that they may want to read, they're going to open it. They know the class, they know the next class information is there. An email needs to offer value. So like I said, if you're just promoting your own products every single time, there's no value in that to everybody. It's like getting that paper ad flyer that the post office leaves in your mailbox once a week. You don't even look at it, right? You have that little recycle bin that's not even, it's in your garage, and you drop it in there on your way back into the house from the mailbox, right? It never gets opened. So think of the pre-digital area. I used to work in for Land's End, we had catalogs. This is before e-commerce, and we had 42 different segments of customers, and depending on how much you bought and how frequently you bought, it would determine how many catalogs you get and how often. So the most, the top 3 or 5% of our customers would get 42 catalogs a year. So even if they really made 12 different catalogs and 2 versions of each, they would get duplicates of the same catalog, and they kept getting them because they kept using them, right? So basically, that was a very refined model of, we know who appreciates the value of this, so we're going to send it to them. All right, and then what works? So a couple things. Brevity. So I wrote a blog. It's 900 words. It's a great topic. People love my blogs. I don't know about them, just saying, just for example. So I'm going to shove it in this email. I'm going to send out the email to everybody. Well, that's a problem. So, because there might be other things you want to share in email too. So I have one client who's also my partner. She owns a salon, and we do a blog twice a month. And every time the email is about to go out, she says, "Oh, she gives me like 15 more things she wants to make sure everybody knows." And I have to always say, no, we've got these 5 sections. We're going to talk about 5 things. Maybe some weeks we add the 6th or 7th thing, but you got to prioritize. People are going to scroll through and see what they care about. They're not going to care about everything, and they're not going to read your whole blog in the email. Keep the email short, and if the blog is interesting, they're going to click on the link to go read the blog on your website. And we'll talk about why that's a better way to do it for multiple reasons, but we'll get to that shortly. So keep things, short, sweet, and to the point, and then make sure people have a place to go where they can get the rest of the information. Right? Do not sit there and go blah 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 blah. People are not going to, and people, especially on mobile phones, your patience level is even less. I'm talking about value. So what are what is the value of this email? Is there something, am I gonna learn something? Is there an offer for something? Or is it an interesting thing I could download? You know, is there a great joke I can retell at the office water cooler later? You know, whatever that is, depending on what kind of business you're in, what kind of audience you have. Brand, stay on brand. So create a template. When they see the email come in, it's got to look like they know who it's coming from. They don't need to have to try to guess. And one thing about email templates, I'll say, do not get fancy. So do not spend a lot of money with a designer making email templates. If your email template is all white background and has your logo on top and nothing else, it's gonna be okay, because what happens with over half of in the B2C segment, you probably have anywhere from 50 to 85% of your customers are going to be opening their email on their phone. All the fancy graphics on your email template are useless and just get in the way and they take up space. Right? Doesn't mean make things ugly. You know, you need to have a decent font, a decent font size, and we'll get to designing stuff, but there's a relevance. Is this relevant to me? Not everything you put out every week is relevant to everybody in your audience, but something should be, right? And use media. Again, all text, you know, makes Jack a dull boy. So, you know, pictures, you can recycle things that are already on your website. You know, you want the pictures to have links in them, so that some people tend to click on pictures, some people click on links. You know, it's like a personality type we need to identify someday. Are you a picture clicker or a link or a text clicker? And timing. This is kind of like silly, but I'll just say, like, the best timing to send an email for any kind of brand industry is generally Tuesday morning, 9 to 12 Eastern Standard Time. That's the highest open rate you'll ever get, is that time of day. There's second and third and fourth place slots out there. I'm not going to share them all here. We said we're starting off basic. If you haven't sent regular emails to your customers yet, just start on Tuesday mornings. Okay. Now it's different. I've got clients that have their email list involves people all over the world. So you know, in this case, you send it all at once, you're getting some people at 2 a.m. But, or if you have a more sophisticated tool like HubSpot, you can set it up so it goes by time zones. So this means you need to send it out 24 hours ahead of time, so it starts hitting everybody at in that time slot on Tuesday. And so this is basically the, you know, very basic stuff, but, you know, think of emails. I mean, even your own emails that you open, the ones you read, and the ones that you signed up for, but you keep deleting them even before you preview it. I mean, we all have a bunch of those, right? They're in the other folder, and you go in every morning and you delete everything in the other folder without even opening one of them. But it's just important enough not to unsubscribe to it. Like, there's someday I might read one of these again. I don't know. And some of them are in there like for years and years and years, but or it's like another consultant that you met years ago when you're both starting your business, and you feel bad if you unsubscribe from his email. Got a couple of those too. So then how do you grow a subscriber base? If you don't have this, well, you have your own customers, right? You know, talk about legitimate sources, people that come on your website, if they reach out to contact you, now you have their email, right? People that you meet in person, people that you exchange cards with at trade shows, people that you know, connect with on social sites, for example, LinkedIn. When you talk about permission-based marketing, you know, what we want to talk about is, you know, what is your definition of permission? So I don't, you know, I'm sorry this is being recorded because it might be used against me in evidence in a fraud trial someday, but like, I don't necessarily feel like you need to ask everybody if it's okay to email them in order to email them. What we tend to do is, even with our clients, and most of my clients are very small and medium-sized businesses, if you download something off the website, you now add it to the email list. If a salesperson met you at a trade show, you're going to be added to the email list. It's pretty common practice. It's, you know, it's on the borderline part of, you know, canned spam laws and stuff, but it's not the kind of thing anybody complains about. People unsubscribe quickly if they don't want it. But it's basically, somebody made the point of exchanging a card with you, getting an email is not going to surprise them. Okay? people came in their website and they downloaded something that you offered, a free download of a white paper or a checklist or a recommendation of something, or, you know, some other kind of brochure. It's not going to surprise them that they get an email later. Right. So that's when you have to make sure the email is valuable, though, because that's when they'll, you know, unsubscribe, or they'll just start, or they might even block your site. Right. So lots of ways to build it. The point is, when you have contact with people, don't ignore that, and make sure that you give yourself a way to have an additional contact later. So like I said, this is literally the only way you can reach out to people outside of using messaging and a social platform, which is very, very labor intensive if you have to do them all one at a time. Now, there's a consultant whose book I read when I started my business 12 years ago, and I loved his books because it was great, almost like a manual for starting a business. He was like such an arrogant person. I was like, I love his books, but I never want to actually like meet this guy in person. I went to see him speak one time, and I was just like, oh my God. And he's like, and he has some great sayings, for example, like, you know, if you don't toot your own horn, there's no music. Like, I always love that one. But and it was like, the greatest measure of wealth is leisure time. You know, it doesn't matter how much money you make business, if you don't have free time to use it, you're still poor. So great stuff like that. But he also said, you know, when you start your business, send an email to every single person you know in your address book and let them know you're in business and here's what you're doing. All your friends, family, cousins, you know, exes, you name it, just, you're looking for referrals. I think if you have never done that before and you don't have any email list, that's a great way to start, because anybody that already knows you isn't gonna go to the police about getting an email. At least we not hope not. It says, might say more about you if you do. Like, obviously, if there's somebody with a restraining order against you, please do not send them the email. So we talk about the segmentation and personalization. This is really like the 201 class, not the 101, but we're just going to say one little thing about it, like the basic piece. So this cute little graphic here that I found kind of talks about some of the things, like you can segment by, you know, demographics, you know, different aspects of your target niche, benchmarking, for example, like we're going to segment people that buy this much versus people that buy this much, other types of classifications that you may need for your industry. But, you know, really, like, you can start off, you know, simple personalizing things with most tools. And if you're like, I would recommend something, if you don't have an email tool now, like I recommend something like MailChimp, which is a free version. It gives you, I think, up to 1,000 names. You can use it for free. I'm not sure what the current level is for free, but you can personalize stuff with first names. And the tools let you do that, so that, I mean, you know, from your own experience, you're more likely to catch your eye and you put the first name in the subject line too, right? And that's kind of shows that somebody's actually, we all know it's automated, we all know it's software doing it, but we also know that someone actually had to take the time to set it up that way and actually has your first name. And that makes a difference psychologically. So little details like that are great. The segmenting could also just be like people that have bought from me, people that haven't bought from me, right? Or customers that have been active in the last 12 months, customers that have not been active for 12 months. And think about the different messages you would have for them. So if your entire email says 45 people, segmenting might seem a little much. In fact, you could probably just kind of call them all once a month, and you know, if it's a sales objective, right? But in terms of educating people, the email is a way to get them to come back to your website. And so think about that when we get to the Q&A. Maybe one thing to think about is what would be the segments you think you would have in your business. I'd like to hear that from you when we get to the Q&A. So I have a client, for example, we have email sequences that go out to different stages of the pipeline. So somebody is a marketing prospect when they download a white paper and they get all the weekly emails. If they actually request a quote or there's certain content that they download, you know, we sort of score it with points. Then that also, those two things will trigger them to become what we call a sales qualified lead. And the salespeople will have them on their radar. And if they get to the point of asking for a quote, they're now an opportunity. And if the opportunity comes and goes without any response, they never respond to the quote, or they just say no, they become a lapsed opportunity. And each of those segments has a different set of email sequences that go out to them automatically that is personalized and kind of structured around what that part of the pipeline is, right? So if they actually got to the part of actually getting a quote, that means they actually research the products. We don't necessarily need to talk about the products, but we can talk about the benefits. We could talk about case studies, things that they may not have seen the first time that may convince them to come back and revive the quote stage. Okay, and then there's this thing called call to action, which I always see. Oops, I thought I had another picture there, but I never like this word because it sounds very physical and it sounds like there's motion involved, and it's not really, we're just sitting on our butts clicking things, or it's not quite the action. I don't feel any adrenaline from it, or I get adrenaline when people are clicking on my emails, but I don't exactly feel like I'm burning calories with this thing here. So, but basically the call to action is something you got to have in your emails. I see a lot of people forget this, and we'll show you an example, a bad one, shortly. But basically, if people don't have a way to follow up with something you're sharing with them, then what's the point? And this is why, we talked about part of growing your business is having growing traffic on your website. So think of your email as a minimum. If it does nothing else, it's going to continue bringing people back to your website. So the call to action goes to the landing page on the website where they can download something. The call to action, goes to the blog they can read that you started with the blurb in the email. There's something that, if you have a product feedback or something else or something that to share, obviously, right? You want to be able to share stuff. So having those sharing buttons is important. You want all that stuff to come out of your website, because then Google looks at that and says, oh, this website is actually relevant for these topics. And that's what also serves greater traffic for you in the long term. So your email actually contributes to your traffic, not just in the raw numbers, but also in how Google treats your website in the future. So buttons, pictures, a text hyperlink, lots of different ways. You can put any image and turn it into a call to action. You just have to make sure that it's labeled that way so people know that they can click on it. But again, and having more than one thing. So not everybody, like we all have different kinds of way of learning, right? Some of us are visual learners. Some of us have audiobooks. Some of us like to read the text. So some people like to click on pictures. Some people like to click on text. Some people like to look on the bottom for a more information button or something, right? There's a lot of different ways. Do not just create one call to action. Do not use a software that only lets you do one call to action. That's the other piece. So I have a client with that kind of software right now. It's very problematic. So again, just to, kind of make it, near the end here, things we would focus on with the basics is there's a lot of metrics. Everything in marketing has too many metrics, just so you know. I used to work at Microsoft. There was like this annual, I'll call it an annual competition. It was like a Hunger Games kind of thing for everyone trying to get their divisions or their department's metrics onto the management dashboard, which had like a limit of like 35 metrics. And here you have this company of like 60,000 people on the Redmond campus, all trying to compete to have something that they're doing, make it onto the management dashboard, because if it's on the management dashboard, that means you're going to get a lot of attention next year. Which I was always kind of like, you want all that attention? Because I would really rather just do my work without it. But then each department has their own dashboard, sometimes with 80 or 100 metrics, and I was always like this is just insane. Like, let's just focus on like what's really important at the end of the day that connects with what really drives the business. It's not always just sales, right? If you have a very long sales cycle, marketing metrics may not be focusing on sales, right? But things like, the health of your mailing list will be here by the and that says driving rate. It should be delivery rate. Sorry, that's a bad word there. It should be delivery rate. How many of your emails I can send out get delivered? Okay, your email tools will tell you this when you send an email out. Of those, how many of those get opened, right? email tools sometimes will also show you what your industry does. If it knows your industry, it'll show you how you compare in your industry. There's no right number here, right? You know, if you're doing 5% for a year, is that terrible? I don't know. It could be. Depends on what your list is like and what your industry is. But if it was 5% last year and it's 8% this year, okay, now you're 60% improvement over last year. So so now it's fantastic, right? Now if your industry is 28% and you're a 5, then you say, okay, we need to go out and shameless flattery of other people by copying them is okay. Go to your competitors, see what they're doing, sign up for their emails. You know, decide if it's something useful or, you know, obviously don't copy everything, but you can learn from the structure of it. You know, what is it, you know, what are they doing well? What are they not doing well? All right, you are your own best researcher for this. So do not be shy about going on and learning from your competitors. And then click rate. So what is there's click rate and there's click through rate. So click rate is generally a raw number of related to how many people you actually sent the email to. That number will always make you feel sad because it's a very small number. They might see like 0.1% or 0.2%. But then the click through rate is the one that makes you happier because it might say 6% or 8%, which means like of the people that open the email, 6 or 8% actually clicked on it. Is that good? I don't know. Depends on your industry. Depends on relevance. Depends on how important it is to that person at the time. If I'm sending out something for the salon client, for example, I want them clicking on the, you know, book my next appointment if they haven't already. I want them to click on the blog things. I want them to learn about how to take better care of their scalp. Right? I'm not promoting my products in there. I'm just trying to make it easy for them to take care of themselves. Right? And then the last one being conversion rate. So if somebody actually clicks and goes to the book an appointment page and then makes an appointment, that's a conversion. Or if they download a white paper, that's a conversion. If they, you know, fill out the contact us form because that's what the email invited them to do, that's a conversion. Now you have them in your database again as converting by having downloaded something or clicked on something. So here's a salon email that went out last month, or I guess 2 months ago now. Today's February. My brother's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Jeff. He's but the owner here was a little desperate because the holiday emails weren't working very well. So she went back into the appointment booking software to make her own email off-brand from the main email tool we use, and sent this out with the only CTA in here is to purchase an online gift card. And everything else is in text with all this other stuff about you know, things that aren't discounted. There's a happy hour. It's just kind of like it's all centered instead of left aligned. It's a very, very challenging thing to wade through as a reader, at least for me. I don't know. But anyways, nobody came to the happy hour. And she was even more sad than she was the day before. So and we had, and the online gift card thing was something she got from another consulting group where the other members that were trying out this thing of selling gift cards for like $3,000. In other words, pretty much something to cover a whole year's worth of services at the salon. And some of them are doing really, really well with it. Like, you know, they had like 20, 30 people buy $2,000, $3,000 gift cards because they were adding on another 10 to 20% of value to the card. It's pretty much, now they've got their entire year worth of hair color and cut and even facials all pretty much purchased ahead of time. And that didn't really work for her either. This, you know, her market is not one of the wealthier markets out here. So, I mean, that's just one of the example of, I said, just because you have all these things to say doesn't mean you need to say them all. And if you need to say them all, you need to find a better way to say it. Okay. So I'm going to jump to a page here and let's switch my sharing here for a second. And this is a way more boring, but way more effective. I'm going to find my new share button here. There we are. Hang on a second. Oh, I gotta separate this guy. Sorry, having a little pause here. There we go. Okay. I'll throw that up. Now, this is an email from another client of mine from last week. And this is it's a B2B. They sell equipment for warehouses and factories. And every week there's emails that has a blog title in it. And we basically talk about the 8 common warehouse management problems. This is the name of the blog, actually. Hello Friend is a generic, when there's no first name. You know, most of the tools allow you to input a universal name, whether you don't have a first name for somebody, which is pretty common. So that way it doesn't go out there as hello blank, right? So you can put in friend, you could put subscriber. Just a blurb. This is actually the first 2 lines of the blog itself, and then the button to click on learn more if you want to read the blog. So we generally get, 12 to 15% open rate and about a 5% click rate on these. And the blogs on this client site are what drives most of their traffic. Because the blog's topics are things that people go online to ask questions for, to search for answers, and they find this website because of the blog. But then below that, we have a featured download, which is this is actually in HubSpot. We have a thing called Smart Content, and this basically actually rotates a different download every week. So if somebody opened the email and saw this, and next week they would see a different one. And if they had clicked on this, they would not see this one anymore. They would, because they'd be going over there to download it and convert it. So we have about 5 of these rotating through right now. So every week somebody opens the email, they'll see one that they haven't seen before. They'll do that until they see one that they until they actually want one. And super simple. There's pictures, there's a couple links, and then you go farther down. These are sort of content sections that are there every week, but we don't really care that much if people don't go any farther than above the fold here. All right, so above the fold basically means it's the first screen you can see, and then make sure there's a link up there. Now, the bad example we had before, the one link they had was all the way at the end of the email. So even if you wanted the gift card and you would have jumped in that right away, you wouldn't know that was there until you actually scrolled through the whole email. All right, so don't be shy about shoving the links up. Obviously don't get gaudy and put them everywhere and hanging like people that still put tinsel on their Christmas tree. No offense, but it's like you gotta be professional, but also be thorough about, Tiffany's going to scold me later about the tinsel comment. I can tell. So Tiffany just revealed herself. So anyway, but these are all the things that are always here as resources, not as promotional. It is promotional, but like they're not here as part of the current email. They're just as part of the template we have here. And then upcoming events. This actually, my client must have added this themselves because I didn't see this before. This really needs to move up farther up here because I don't expect anybody to scroll down here and see this. Of course, in this industry, everyone's going to be at that event anyway, so it may not matter. All right, so let's go back to the deck, and then we're almost ready for your questions.
And while you do that, I'm gonna take us off Facebook Live so we can have their confidential Q&A session for the Empower People members.
Okay,